Maria Gonzalez, a resilient mother, defied her abusive millionaire husband to save her son's life. She never expected her brave 6-year-old to reveal the shocking truth that would turn the courtroom against his father. Before we dive into the story, let's do what Sleepless in Seattle taught us. Share where you're listening from. Comment below. The kitchen light flickers as Maria measures coffee grounds with trembling fingers. Pre-dawn shadows creep across the cramped apartment, and every clink of metal against ceramic sends a jolt through her spine. She holds her breath, straining to hear any movement from the bedroom where Daniel sleeps. The coffee must be perfect. 2 level scoops, water just below boiling, exactly 4 minutes to steep. One morning last week, she let it brew too long, and Daniel's rage had turned the kitchen into a minefield of shattered mugs and accusations. Her shoulder still aches from where she hit the counter, trying to dodge the ceramic shrapnel. A floorboard creaks from Lucas's room, and Maria's heart stutters. She abandons the coffee preparation, padding across worn linoleum on silent feet. Lucas stands in his doorway, small fingers clutching his worn teddy bear. At 6, he's already learned to move like a ghost in his own home. "Mama," he whispers, reaching for her. Maria presses a finger to her lips, gathering him close. His skin feels warm against her neck as she carries him to the kitchen, away from Daniel's door. "Papa's still sleeping, mi amor," she murmurs into his hair, which smells of the cheap shampoo she bought on clearance. "We must be very quiet." Lucas nods, his grip tightening on her shirt. He understands too much for his age, the unspoken rules that govern their mornings, the careful dance they perform around Daniel's moods. Maria's throat tightens as she settles him at the kitchen table, where a stack of coloring books provides silent entertainment. The coffee timer chimes softly, and Maria rushes to silence it. Her hands shake as she pours the dark liquid into Daniel's favorite mug, the one with his company logo, a reminder of the job that gives him power over their lives. She positions it precisely on the counter, just as the bedroom door opens. Daniel's footsteps approach like thunder. Maria busies herself with the toaster, keeping her eyes down as he enters. His presence fills the small kitchen, pushing all the air from the room. "The counter's dirty," he says by way of greeting. His voice carries the edge that makes Maria's muscles clench. She glances at the spotless surface she scrubbed twice last night. "I'll clean it again." "You should have done it right the first time." Daniel picks up his coffee, inspecting it with narrowed eyes. "And where's my breakfast?" "Coming right now." Maria reaches for the bread, but her trembling hands betray her. A slice falls to the floor. Daniel's sigh cuts like a knife. "Useless," he mutters, loud enough for Lucas to hear. "Can't even make breakfast without screwing up." Lucas shrinks in his chair, crayon frozen mid-stroke. Maria forces herself to breathe normally as she retrieves the bread, fighting the urge to run to her son. Any show of comfort now would only provoke Daniel further. The toast pops up, slightly darker than Daniel prefers. Maria's stomach churns as she plates it, knowing what comes next. "Burnt again?" Daniel's voice rises. "How hard is it to make fucking toast?" "I'm sorry, I'll make more." "Don't bother." He shoves the plate away, coffee sloshing onto the counter. "Clean this mess up and get that kid to stop staring at me." Maria risks a glance at Lucas, who quickly looks down at his coloring book. Once, he would have run to Daniel for a morning hug. Now he knows better. Her world has shrunk to this tiny kitchen, to the space between Daniel's rage and Lucas's fear. She remembers when she used to dream of becoming a teacher, of having her own classroom filled with children's laughter. Now her only dream is making it through each day without setting off Daniel's temper. "I'm heading out," Daniel announces, straightening his tie. "Try not to waste more money while I'm gone. Those groceries you bought last week were completely unnecessary." Lucas needs a mother who can budget properly. Daniel's eyes narrow. "Don't forget who pays the bills around here." The door slams behind him, and Maria releases the breath she's been holding. Lucas launches himself from his chair, wrapping his arms around her waist. She strokes his hair, murmuring soothing words in Spanish, the language she only dares use when Daniel is gone. "It's okay, mi amor," she whispers, though nothing is okay. "Let's have some breakfast, just you and me." The morning unfolds in the peaceful quiet that follows Daniel's departure. Maria heats milk for Lucas's cereal, adding a sprinkle of cinnamon, a small luxury she keeps hidden in the back of the cupboard. While he eats, she reads from his favorite book, the one about a brave mouse who saves his family. Lucas leans against her, tension slowly melting from his small frame. Mama, he says during a pause in the story, why is Papa always angry? The question pierces Maria's heart. She closes the book, searching for words that won't terrify him. Sometimes people have big feelings they don't know how to handle, she says carefully. But that doesn't mean it's our fault. You know how much I love you, right? Lucas nods, but his eyes hold shadows no child should carry. I love you too, Mama. Maria hugs him close, breathing in his innocent scent. She would die before letting Daniel's darkness extinguish the light in her son's eyes. Later, while Lucas naps, Maria sits at the kitchen table with their budget spread before her. The numbers blur together, a maze of impossible choices. Daniel controls every penny, questioning each purchase, but even with his strict oversight, they barely scrape by. The thought of asking for money for new shoes for Lucas makes her stomach clench. She picks up an old photo tucked into her prayer book, the only personal item she managed to keep when they left Mexico. Her family stands in front of their modest home, faces bright with love and laughter. Her mother's arms are open wide, welcoming the photographer into their joy. Maria traces her finger over their smiles, remembering the safety she once took for granted. A knock at the door startles her from her memories. Maria freezes, heart racing. Daniel has forbidden her from speaking to the neighbors, claiming they're nosy gossips who only want to cause trouble. Maria? Mrs. Chen's voice comes through the door, kind but hesitant. I made too much soup. I thought maybe you and Lucas? Maria's hand hovers over the doorknob. Mrs. Chen has been nothing but kind, offering small gestures of friendship that Maria desperately misses. But Daniel checks the security camera footage sometimes, watching for any sign of disobedience. I'm sorry, Maria calls softly, hating herself for the lies. We're not feeling well today. Silence follows, then quiet footsteps retreating down the hall. Maria leans against the door, loneliness settling around her shoulders like a familiar shawl. The afternoon stretches endlessly. Maria folds laundry, wipes surfaces that are already clean, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from wandering to dangerous thoughts of escape. But as she sorts through Lucas's clothes, she notices his cough has gotten worse. It started 3 days ago, just a tickle, she thought. Now it rattles in his chest, and his forehead burns against her palm when she checks on him. Maria's anxiety spikes as she watches him sleep fitfully, his breathing labored. She tries everything she knows, honey and lemon tea, a cool cloth on his forehead, propping him up with extra pillows. But by evening, his cough sounds like gravel in his lungs, and his skin radiates heat. Mama, he whimpers, my chest hurts. Maria paces the small bedroom, cradling Lucas against her shoulder. His body feels too light, too fragile. When Daniel comes home, she'll have to tell him. Maybe this time he'll listen. The front door opens at exactly 6 o'clock. Maria steels herself, rehearsing the words in her head. She needs to be calm, rational. Daniel hates it when she gets emotional. Daniel. She starts as he loosens his tie. Lucas is sick. I think he needs to see a doctor. Daniel doesn't look up from his phone. He's fine. Kids get sick all the time. This is different. He has a fever and his cough. Did I not just tell you to stop wasting money? Daniel's voice carries that dangerous edge. Give him some Tylenol and put him to bed. We don't have any Tylenol left, Maria says, her voice small. And I really think. You think? Daniel laughs, but there's no humor in it. When have you ever made a good decision? If I left the thinking to you, we'd be living on the street. Lucas coughs from his room, the sound wet and painful. Maria's maternal instinct wars with her fear of Daniel's reaction. Please, she tries one last time. He's having trouble breathing. Jesus Christ, you're dramatic. Daniel stalks to Lucas's room, Maria trailing behind. He places a rough hand on Lucas's forehead. He's barely warm. Stop trying to create problems where there aren't any. But through the night, Lucas's condition worsens. Maria stays by his bed, counting his labored breaths, feeling more helpless with each passing hour. Around midnight, he starts whimpering in his sleep, his small body burning with fever. Maria slips her hand under the loose floorboard by her bed, fingers finding the small stack of bills she saved from the grocery money. $20 here, $5 there. whatever she could squeeze from Daniel's tight budget. It's not much, but it might be enough for a clinic visit. The thought of defying Daniel makes her hands shake, but Lucas's rattling breath leaves her no choice. She bundles him in his warmest jacket, whispering prayers as she gathers her hidden savings. The clinic waiting room is harsh under fluorescent lights. Maria holds Lucas close, jumping at every sound. Each minute feels like betrayal, but when the doctor confirms pneumonia, relief floods through her, despite the terror of consequences to come. He needs these antibiotics, the doctor says, writing a prescription. And he should have come in days ago. Pneumonia in children can be very serious. Maria hands over most of her savings for the medication, each dollar a step closer to Daniel's rage. But as she watches Lucas take his first dose, his small face trusting her completely, she knows she made the right choice. They return home just before dawn. Maria tucks Lucas into bed, praying the antibiotics will work quickly. She's hiding the prescription bottle in her sock drawer when she hears the front door open. Daniel stands in the doorway, his presence sucking all warmth from the room. Where the fuck were you? Lucas was so sick, Maria starts, but Daniel's already moving to the hiding place where she keeps emergency cash. The empty space tells him everything. You took my money. His voice is deadly quiet. After everything I've told you about wasting resources, he has pneumonia, Maria says, stronger than she feels. The doctor said, the doctor? Daniel's hand shoots out, gripping her arm. You went behind my back to a doctor? Lucas appears in his doorway, drawn by the voices. His eyes widen at the scene before him. Mama? His voice trembles. Get back in your room. Daniel's shout makes both Maria and Lucas flinch. Maria breaks free from his grip, positioning herself between Daniel and Lucas. Her son's scared face ignites something in her chest, a fierce protectiveness that overwhelms her usual fear. Don't yell at him, she says, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. He's sick and scared. Daniel's face darkens. Get out. What? Get out. Both of you. If you think you can make decisions without me, you can do it on the street. He grabs Maria's arm again, shoving her toward Lucas. They stumble together as Daniel herds them to the front door. Maria barely has time to grab their coats before he pushes them into the hallway. The door slams behind them with devastating finality. Lucas bursts into tears, his sobs turning into coughs that shake his whole body. Maria gathers him close, her mind racing. They have no money, no phone, nowhere to go. Rain pelts the windows at the end of the hallway. Maria remembers a pamphlet she once saw at the supermarket, quickly stuffed into her pocket before Daniel could see. A women's shelter, not too far from here. She'd memorized the address, though she never thought she'd be desperate enough to use it. Hold on to me, mi amor, she whispers to Lucas. We're going to find help. They step out into the rain, Lucas's fever-warm body pressed against her chest. Each step takes them further from the apartment, from Daniel's control, from the life Maria thought was her only option. The shelter is 10 blocks away. Maria hurries through dark streets, jumping at every shadow. Lucas's breathing grows more labored, and she murmurs encouragement with each step. Almost there, mi vida. Stay strong for mama. Finally, a building comes into view, its windows glowing with warm light. A sign reads, New Beginnings Women's Shelter. Maria's legs shake as she climbs the steps. The door opens to reveal a woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair. I'm Clara, she says, taking in their wet clothes and Lucas's flushed face. Come in out of the rain. Maria steps across the threshold, holding Lucas tight. For the first time in years, tears spill freely down her face as Clara wraps a warm blanket around their shoulders. You're safe now, Clara says softly. Both of you. Lucas burrows deeper into Maria's embrace as she sinks into a chair, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. In this moment, watching Clara prepare tea with steady hands, Maria makes a silent promise to her son they will never go back. Whatever comes next, she will find a way to give Lucas the life he deserves, a life without fear, without walking on eggshells, without the shadow of Daniel's rage. The storm rages outside, but within these walls, Maria feels the first stirring of hope. It's fragile, like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, but it's there. And for tonight, that's enough. Dawn creeps through the shelter's windows, painting the walls in soft grays and pinks. Maria hasn't slept, but exhaustion feels distant compared to the weight of Lucas in her arms. His breathing has eased somewhat since Clara gave him medicine, though his forehead still burns against her neck. Would you like some breakfast? Clara sets a mug of coffee on the table beside Maria. Steam rises in delicate curls, carrying the scent of real coffee beans, not the cheap instant kind Daniel insisted was good enough for her. The kitchen's quiet this early. We could talk. Maria's stomach clenches at the thought of food, but Lucas stirs at the mention of breakfast. His eyes, glassy with fever, find hers. I'm hungry, Mama. Of course, mi amor. Maria forces her voice to stay steady. Every word feels like a betrayal of Daniel's rules, yet she makes herself speak. What would you like? Clara's kitchen is nothing like the sterile, institutional space Maria expected. Warm yellow walls glow in the morning light, and hand-sewn curtains frame windows that overlook a small garden. A pot of oatmeal bubbles on the stove, filling the air with the comfort of cinnamon and brown sugar. The other families won't be up for another hour, Clara says, spooning oatmeal into bowls. Her movements are careful, deliberate, like someone used to dealing with skittish creatures. You're safe here, Maria. No one can come in without authorization, and we have security at night. Maria's spoon trembles against her bowl. Daniel, he has connections. At the police department, at his company. He'll say I kidnapped Lucas. Let him try. Clara's voice carries steel beneath its gentleness. We have lawyers who work with mothers like you. Good ones who understand domestic violence cases. The word makes Maria flinch. Domestic violence. It sounds too harsh, too dramatic for the careful dance of her marriage. Yes, Daniel gets angry. Yes, he sometimes breaks things. But violence? She thinks of the bruises she's hidden, the explanations she's given at Lucas's school about her limping, her wrapped wrist, her long sleeves in summer. Lucas coughs, the sound still too deep in his chest, and reality crashes back. Whatever she calls it, her son is sick because Daniel's control nearly kept him from medical care. The truth sits heavy in her stomach, refusing to be ignored. I don't have any money, Maria whispers. No job. He never let me work. That's not unusual. Clara slides a folder across the table. Inside, Maria glimpses pamphlets about job training, GED programs, childcare assistance. We can help with all of that, but first, you both need rest, and Lucas needs to see our staff doctor this morning. The morning unfolds in a blur of kindness that feels more terrifying than Daniel's rage. The shelter's doctor examines Lucas thoroughly, praising Maria for getting him treatment when she did. A volunteer brings them clean clothes and toiletries. Another shows them to a small but private room with twin beds and a window that actually opens. Mama, Lucas says as she tucks him into bed, his voice small but clearer after the doctor's treatments. Are we going home? Maria smooths his hair back from his forehead. The fever has finally broken, leaving his skin cool and damp. No, mi amor, we're going to stay here for a while. Because of Papa's anger? Yes. Maria sits on the edge of his bed, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes, when a place isn't safe anymore, we have to be brave and find a new home. Like the mouse in your story, remember? Lucas nods, his eyes already heavy with sleep. The mouse was scared at first, but then he found somewhere better. That's right. Maria kisses his forehead, tasting salt and childhood innocence. Sleep now. I'll be right here. She watches him drift off, his breathing still ragged but stronger than before. Outside their window, the city wakes to another ordinary day. Cars honk in morning traffic. A garbage truck beeps as it backs up. Someone's car alarm goes off briefly before being silenced. The normalcy feels surreal after the chaos of their escape. Maria's phone, left behind in their flight, would be exploding with messages from Daniel by now. She imagines his rage when he realizes she's really gone, that she's taken Lucas beyond his reach. A knock at the door makes her jump. Clara enters with another cup of coffee and a legal pad. When you're ready, she says gently, we should talk about getting a restraining order. Maria stares at the yellow paper, its blank lines waiting to record her story. How does she explain years of walking on eggshells, of measuring coffee grounds with trembling hands, of watching her bright, loving son learn to move like a ghost in his own home? But as Lucas shifts in his sleep, murmuring something peaceful, Maria picks up the pen. Letter by letter, word by word, she begins to write. Each sentence feels like picking a lock, opening doors she thought were sealed forever. Clara reads without commenting, her face professional but kind. When Maria finally sets down the pen, her hand aching and her cheeks wet, Clara nods once. "You're not alone," she says simply, "and you're stronger than you know." Outside their window, rain begins to fall again, washing the city streets clean. Maria thinks of their apartment, of Daniel's rage echoing through empty rooms. She remembers the girl she used to be, full of dreams and determination. That girl is still inside her, she realizes. Buried deep, perhaps, but alive. Lucas stirs, reaching for her hand in his sleep. Maria threads her fingers through his, feeling the quick flutter of his pulse against her skin. Together, they've taken the first step toward freedom. The road ahead will be hard. She has no illusions about that. Daniel will not let them go easily. But here, in this small room that smells of disinfectant and hope, Maria allows herself to imagine a different future. One where Lucas grows up without fear, where she reclaims her voice, her dreams, her power, where they build a new life, step by careful step, until Daniel's shadow no longer darkens their days. The storm outside intensifies, rain drumming against the window like applause. Maria closes her eyes, listening to Lucas breathe, to the steady thrum of her own heart. They are here. They are safe. They are free. For now, that is everything. Rain pelts Maria's shoulders as she staggers up the shelter steps, Lucas burning with fever against her chest. The brick building looms before her, its windows glowing amber in the darkness. Her finger hovers over the doorbell, trembling. Behind her, empty streets stretch into shadow, and every passing car makes her flinch, certain it's Daniel searching for them. Lucas coughs, a wet, rattling sound that vibrates through his small frame. The noise galvanizes her, pushing through her paralysis. She presses the bell. Footsteps approach from inside, and Maria's heart hammers. What if they turn her away? What if Daniel has already called, spinning lies about her mental state, her fitness as a mother? She should run, find somewhere else, anywhere. The door opens, spilling warm light onto the rain-slicked steps. A woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes takes in Maria's drenched clothes, Lucas's flushed face. "I'm Clara," she says softly, stepping back to make space. "Come in out of the rain." Maria hesitates, years of conditioning making her scan for traps, for signs this is too good to be true. But Lucas shivers against her, and she forces herself forward, crossing the threshold into light and warmth. The entryway smells of lemon cleaner and coffee. Clara guides them past a security desk, where a guard nods hello, into a small office lined with filing cabinets. Everything feels surreal. The cushioned chair Clara offers, the box of tissues on the desk, the quiet hum of a space heater in the corner. "Let's get you both warm and dry first," Clara says, producing towels and a fleece blanket from a cabinet. "Then we can talk." Maria wraps Lucas in the blanket, her hands shaking as she dries his hair. His skin burns against her palms, and his breathing comes in shallow gasps that tear at her heart. "He's sick," she manages, her voice barely a whisper. "Pneumonia. I took him to the clinic, and Daniel." The words stick in her throat. Clara nods, her expression gentle but focused. "We have a staff doctor who can check on him first thing in the morning. For now, let's get you settled in a room where you can both rest." She leads them down a carpeted hallway to a small but clean room with twin beds and a window overlooking a courtyard. The sight of actual beds with real pillows and blankets makes Maria's legs weak. How long has it been since she slept without fear? "The bathroom's through there," Clara says, pointing to a door. "There are clean towels, and I'll bring you both some dry clothes. Would you like some tea? Or I can make hot chocolate for Lucas?" The kindness in her voice nearly breaks Maria. She nods, not trusting herself to speak, and Clara squeezes her shoulder before stepping out. Once they're alone, Maria helps Lucas change into dry pajamas she finds in a drawer. His movements are sluggish, his eyes glassy with fever. "Mama," he mumbles as she tucks him into bed. "Are we safe here?" The question pierces her heart. At 6 years old, her son already understands the concept of safety as something precarious, something that can be lost. She strokes his damp hair back from his forehead. "Yes, mi amor, we're safe." Clara returns with tea and hot chocolate on a tray, along with children's Tylenol and a stuffed elephant. Lucas clutches the toy immediately, burying his face in its soft gray fur. "Thank you," Maria whispers, watching Lucas drift into an uneasy sleep. "Would you like to talk?" Clara settles into a chair by the window, her presence steady but undemanding. "Whatever you share stays confidential." Maria's hands clench around her teacup. Where does she even begin? How does she explain years of walking on eggshells, of measuring coffee grounds with trembling fingers, of watching her bright, loving son learn to move like a ghost in his own home? He'll find us, she says instead, voicing her deepest fear. Daniel has connections at the police department, at his company. He'll say I kidnapped Lucas, that I'm unstable, that. Maria. Clara's voice is firm but kind. Look around this room. Notice the security cameras in the hallway, the guard at the front desk, the keycard locks on every door. We know what we're dealing with. You're not the first mother who's come to us afraid of a powerful man. Tears spill down Maria's cheeks, hot and silent. I shouldn't have waited so long. Lucas was so sick, and I still hesitated, still tried to follow Daniel's rules. You left when you could. You left when you could. Clara leans forward, her eyes intense. That takes incredible courage. Many women never find the strength to leave at all. Maria thinks of the other moments she could have left, should have left. After the first time Daniel threw a plate at her head, after he drained their savings account to punish her for buying Lucas new shoes without permission, after he twisted her wrist so hard it took weeks to heal. But she'd stayed, telling herself it wasn't that bad, that Lucas needed his father, that she had nowhere else to go. The excuses taste like ashes in her mouth now. I don't know what to do next, she admits, her voice small. Clara pulls a folder from her bag. When you're ready, we can talk about your options. Legal aid, restraining orders, custody arrangements. But for tonight, just focus on resting, on keeping Lucas comfortable. Tomorrow is soon enough to start fighting. Maria nods, exhaustion settling into her bones like lead. Clara stands, gathering the empty cups. One more thing, she says at the door. You're not alone anymore, Maria. Remember that. After Clara leaves, Maria curls up on the bed next to Lucas, listening to his labored breathing. Outside their window, rain continues to fall, washing the city streets clean. She thinks of their apartment, of Daniel's rage echoing through empty rooms, of the life she thought was her only option. Lucas stirs in his sleep, reaching for her hand. Maria threads her fingers through his, feeling the quick flutter of his pulse against her skin. Together, they've taken the first step toward freedom. The road ahead terrifies her. She has no illusions about that. Daniel will not let them go easily. But here, in this small room that smells of laundry detergent and hope, Maria allows herself to imagine a different future. One where Lucas grows up without fear, where she reclaims her voice, her dreams, her power. The storm outside intensifies, rain drumming against the window like applause. Maria closes her eyes, listening to Lucas breathe, to the steady thrum of her own heart. They are here. They are safe. For now, that is everything. Days blur together in the shelter. Maria measures time by Lucas's improving breaths, by the gradual fading of her bruises, by the cups of real coffee Clara brings each morning. But she can't shake the feeling of being an imposter, of taking up space meant for real victims. She keeps to their room mostly, venturing out only for meals when the common areas are quiet. The other women's voices drift through the walls, laughing, crying, sharing stories she's not ready to hear. Their courage makes her feel small, unworthy. How are you settling in? Clara asks during their daily check-in, her notepad open but forgotten on her lap. Maria smooths imaginary wrinkles from her borrowed clothes. Fine, everyone is very kind. But. Maria swallows hard. Daniel will come for us. He won't just let us disappear, and when he does, we'll be ready. Clara's voice carries quiet steel. That's why I want to talk about getting a restraining order in place. The words send ice through Maria's veins. He'll be furious. Yes, Clara agrees simply. But his anger doesn't control you anymore. Except it does. Even here, surrounded by security cameras and locked doors, Maria flinches at loud noises. She checks her phone, the cheap prepaid one Clara gave her, compulsively, though Daniel can't possibly have the number. His presence fills her mind like smoke, choking out other thoughts. A knock at the office door makes them both turn. A woman stands in the doorway, dark circles under her eyes, but a fierce set to her jaw. Sorry to interrupt, she says. Clara, do you have a minute? The lawyer called about. She stops, noticing Maria. Oh, I didn't realize you were with someone. It's okay, Rosa. Clara gestures for her to enter. Maria, this is Rosa. She's been with us for 3 months. Rosa's smile is warm but knowing. The first few weeks are the hardest, she says, settling into a chair. You keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Keep thinking he'll somehow find you? Maria nods, throat tight. My Eduardo was like that too. Had to control everything. What I wore, who I talked to, how much I spent at the grocery store. Convinced me I was crazy, that no one else would ever want me. Rosa's laugh holds no humor. Turns out he was wrong about a lot of things. How did you? Maria trails off, unsure how to ask what she really wants to know. How did you stop being afraid? How did you learn to trust yourself again? One day at a time, Rosa says, as if hearing the unspoken questions. With help from Clara, from the other women here, from the lawyers who helped me get custody of my kids. She leans forward, eyes intense. Your story isn't over, Maria. It's just beginning. The words echo in Maria's mind later as she watches Lucas color at their small table. He's humming softly, something he never dared do at home, and the sound makes her heart ache with equal parts joy and grief. A commotion in the hallway shatters the peaceful moment. Raised voices, the thud of running feet. Maria's body moves before her mind can catch up, gathering Lucas close, scanning for exits. Clara appears in their doorway, slightly breathless. Everything's fine, she says quickly. Just a small situation with another resident's ex showing up. Security handled it. The words are meant to reassure, but panic claws at Maria's chest. If one man could find the shelter, Daniel could too. He's smarter, more resourceful, more determined than Mama? Lucas's small voice cuts through her spiral. You're squeezing too tight. Maria forces her arms to relax, horror washing through her at the fear in her son's eyes. I'm sorry, mi amor. Mama was just surprised. She starts to pull away, but Lucas holds on. It's okay to be scared sometimes, he says, parroting words she's told him countless times. But we're safe here, right? You said we're safe. Something breaks and mends inside Maria's chest. She kisses the top of his head, breathing in the clean scent of his hair. Yes, we are. And you know what? There's a group meeting this afternoon. Would you like to go to the children's playroom while I talk with some other mamas? Lucas's eyes light up at the mention of the playroom with its books and toys and art supplies. But he searches her face carefully. You'll be okay by yourself? The question, so adult, so aware, makes Maria's throat tight. I will. And you'll be right down the hall if I need you. She watches him skip ahead of her to the playroom, his steps lighter than she's seen in months. Rosa meets them there, her own daughter already building with blocks in the corner. The group helps, Rosa says quietly as Lucas joins the other child. Even if you just listen at first, sometimes hearing other stories makes your own easier to carry. Maria nods, squaring her shoulders. One step at a time, she reminds herself. Today, she'll sit in a circle with other women who understand. Tomorrow, she'll think about restraining orders and custody battles. Right now, watching Lucas build a tower with Rosa's daughter, she lets herself believe in beginnings. The phone call comes on a Tuesday morning while Maria is helping Lucas practice his letters. Clara appears in their doorway, her face carefully neutral. Daniel's lawyer contacted us, she says without preamble. He's claiming you kidnapped Lucas. The pencil snaps in Maria's grip. Beside her, Lucas goes still, his worksheet forgotten. I'll take him to the playroom, Rosa offers from down the hall, appearing like a guardian angel. She holds out her hand to Lucas. Want to help me organize the art supplies, Chiquito? Lucas looks to Maria, who manages a nod despite her numb lips. She watches him follow Rosa, his small shoulders tense with uncertainty. What exactly did the lawyer say? Maria asks, once Lucas is out of earshot. Clara closes the door, settling into the room's single chair. He's filing for emergency custody, claiming you're mentally unstable and that taking Lucas was an act of parental alienation. The legal terms wash over Maria like acid. She should have known Daniel would do this, should have been prepared. But the reality of it, the way he can reach into their sanctuary and shake the foundations of their newfound peace, makes her dizzy with fear. I can't lose him, she whispers. Clara, I can't. You won't. Clara's voice carries absolute certainty. These are common tactics, Maria. Abusers use the legal system to maintain control when physical intimidation no longer works. But we have resources, good lawyers who understand domestic violence cases. Maria thinks of the bruises that have finally faded, the medical records from Lucas's pneumonia, the years of financial abuse documented in bank statements. But Daniel is respected at his company, knows people in the police department, his word against hers. He'll make me sound crazy, she says, voicing her deepest fear. He's so good at twisting things, making people believe his version of events. Then we'll show them the truth. Clara pulls out her ever-present notepad. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. The story pours out of Maria like poison from a wound. Every incident she's buried, every manipulation she's endured. Clara takes notes in her precise handwriting, asking clarifying questions when needed, but mostly letting Maria speak. By the end, Maria feels hollowed out, scraped raw. But there's something else too, something that feels like strength. Mi amor? Lucas's voice comes from the doorway. He stands there clutching his stuffed elephant, eyes wide with concern. Are you crying? Maria touches her cheeks, surprised to find them wet. Happy tears, she lies, opening her arms. Lucas burrows against her chest, his warmth anchoring her to the present moment. Papa's lawyer called, he says into her shirt. Not a question. Maria meets Clara's eyes over Lucas's head, seeing her own pain reflected there. How does she explain this to a 6-year-old? How does she prepare him for the battle ahead without crushing his innocent spirit? Yes, she says finally. There are going to be some meetings with lawyers and judges. They need to make sure you're safe and happy. Lucas pulls back, his face serious. I am safe with you. The simple truth of it steals Maria's spine. She cups Lucas's face in her hands, memorizing every detail, the spray of freckles across his nose, the slight gap where he lost his first tooth, the trust in his dark eyes. Then that's what we'll tell them, she says, and feels the words settle into her bones like a promise. Later, after Lucas is asleep, Maria sits with Rosa in the shelter's small kitchen. The night air hums with cicadas, and somewhere in the distance a siren wails. I wanted to run when Eduardo's lawyers came after me, Rosa admits, stirring sugar into her tea. Thought about taking the kids and disappearing somewhere he'd never find us. What stopped you? Clara, she said running would only prove Eduardo right, that I was unstable, unfit, so I stayed and fought. Rosa's smile is fierce in the fluorescent light, and I won. Maria traces the rim of her mug, thinking of the legal papers that will arrive tomorrow, of the courtroom that awaits them. Of Daniel's smooth voice convincing strangers she's delusional, dangerous. I'm tired of being afraid, she says finally. Rosa reaches across the table, squeezing her hand. Good. Use that. Let it fuel you. They sit in companionable silence, listening to the night sounds of the shelter, a baby crying 2 floors up, the soft murmur of the night staff making rounds, the hum of the ancient refrigerator. Outside, the city breathes its urban lullaby of distant traffic and whispered winds. Maria thinks of all the nights she spent awake in her marriage, listening for Daniel's footsteps, gauging his mood by the sound of keys hitting the counter or the slam of a cabinet door. The shelter's nighttime noises are different, softer, less threatening. They speak of other women finding their way through darkness toward dawn. You should try to sleep, Rosa says, gathering their empty mugs. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Maria nods, but they both know sleep won't come easily. Not with Daniel's legal threats hanging over her like storm clouds. Not with Lucas's future balanced on the edge of a judge's decision. Back in their room, Lucas stirs as she slides into bed beside him. Mama? His voice is thick with sleep. Shh, mi amor. Everything's okay? He burrows closer, his breath warm against her neck. Maria strokes his hair, remembering how tiny he felt in her arms the day he was born. She'd promised then to protect him from every harm, never imagining the greatest threat would come from his own father. Morning arrives with Clara and a woman Maria hasn't met before. Tall, with sharp eyes and a briefcase that screams authority. This is Alice Rivera. Clara introduces them. She's the lawyer I told you about, the one who specializes in cases like yours. Alice's handshake is firm, professional. Clara briefed me on your situation. I know you're scared, Maria, but Daniel's legal threats are just that. Threats. We can fight this. They spend the next hour in Clara's office, Alice taking detailed notes as Maria recounts everything from her marriage. The lawyer's questions are direct but gentle, teasing out details Maria hadn't even realized were important. The pneumonia incident is particularly significant, Alice says, tapping her pen against her legal pad. It demonstrates a clear pattern of medical neglect, combined with the documented history of controlling behavior and financial abuse. A knock interrupts them. Rosa stands in the doorway, her face unnaturally pale. Maria, she says, You need to see this. She holds out her phone, open to a local news website. Maria's stomach drops as she reads the headline. Local executive claims wife absconded with child, cites mental health concerns. The article is everything she feared. Daniel painted as the concerned husband, herself as the unstable wife. Her hands shake as she reads his quoted statement. I just want my son back. Maria needs help, and I'm worried about Lucas's safety. He's trying to control the narrative, Alice says, her voice hard. Classic abuser tactic. But it can backfire. The more public he makes this, the more opportunities we have to present evidence of his abuse. Maria barely hears her. The words on the screen blur together as panic claws at her chest. Daniel's smiling photo stares back at her, the face he shows the world, so different from the one she knows. I can't do this, she whispers. He's too powerful, too connected. Maybe if I just stop. Clara's voice cuts through her spiral. This is exactly what he wants, to make you feel small, powerless, but you're not that woman anymore, Maria. The mother who carried her sick child through the rain to save his life, Alice adds. That's who you are. That's who the judge needs to see. Maria looks up, meeting their steady gazes. She thinks of Lucas in the playroom, finally learning to laugh again, of the way he no longer flinches at sudden movements, of the pictures he draws now, bright colors instead of shadowy grays. What do we do next? She asks. Alice opens her briefcase, pulling out a stack of forms. We file our own emergency motion. We document everything. The medical records, the financial control, the isolation from friends and family, and we request a temporary restraining order. He'll be furious, Maria says automatically, then catches herself. It's no longer her job to manage Daniel's anger. Good, Rosa says from the doorway. Let him show his true colors to the world. The morning stretches into afternoon as they build their case. Alice's questions are relentless but necessary. Each answer another brick in the wall they're building between Lucas and Daniel's rage. The hearing is set for next month, Alice says finally, gathering her papers. Until then, you stay here where it's safe. Let me handle the legal battles. Maria walks her to the door, feeling both drained and somehow stronger. Through the window, she watches Lucas playing in the courtyard with other shelter children. He's teaching them a game she used to play in Mexico, his hands animated as he explains the rules. He's resilient, Clara says, following her gaze. Children often are, but they need to see us being strong too. Maria thinks of all the times she swallowed her fear, pasted on a smile, pretended everything was fine for Lucas's sake. But maybe true strength isn't in hiding the struggle, it's in showing him how to face it head on. I want to help with the other women, she says suddenly. Not just attend group sessions, but really help, like Rosa does. Clara's smile is warm. I think that would be good for everyone. That evening, as Maria helps Lucas with his bedtime routine, he pauses in the middle of brushing his teeth. Mama, he says, toothpaste foaming around the words, are you going to fight, Papa? The question stops her cold. She kneels beside him, meeting his eyes in the bathroom mirror. Not fight exactly, she says carefully, but I'm going to make sure we stay safe. That means talking to judges and lawyers about why we left. Lucas spits into the sink, his face serious beyond his years. Good. I don't want to be scared anymore. Maria gathers him close, toothpaste and all. Me neither, mi amor. Me neither. That night, she dreams of standing in a courtroom, Daniel's accusations falling around her like rain. But in the dream, she doesn't shrink away. She stands tall, her voice clear as she speaks her truth. Lucas sits in the gallery, his eyes shining with pride, and the judge's gavel sounds like victory. The shelter's small conference room feels too bright, too exposed. Maria's hands clench in her lap as Clara introduces the woman sitting across from them. Alice Rivera, a lawyer. The word alone makes Maria's stomach twist. I understand how difficult this must be, Alice says, her voice warm but professional. No trace of pity, just quiet confidence. She opens a leather-bound notebook, uncapping a silver pen with practiced ease. Would you tell me about your situation with Daniel? Maria's throat tightens. She glances at Clara, who gives an encouraging nod. The words stick like thorns. Maria forces herself to continue, focusing on the steady scratch of Alice's pen against paper. It started small. Comments about my cooking, my cleaning, then about me. Her voice trembles as she describes the progression, how Daniel's criticism evolved into control, how his anger erupted into violence. The broken mugs, the bruised shoulders, the way Lucas learned to vanish at the first sign of his father's rage. Alice asks questions with careful precision. When did the physical abuse begin? Has Daniel ever threatened her life? Does he own weapons? Each answer pulls another thread from the tangled web of Maria's marriage. And you said he monitors the security cameras? Alice makes another note, her expression neutral but intent. Yes, he checks the footage when he gets home, to make sure I haven't. Maria swallows hard. Haven't disobeyed. Alice sets down her pen, meeting Maria's gaze directly. What you've described constitutes severe domestic abuse, Mrs. Gonzalez. You have legal rights and protections, regardless of what Daniel may have told you. The words sound foreign, almost ridiculous. Rights? What rights has she had in the past 6 years besides the right to endure, to survive? But he has connections, Maria whispers. At the police department, his company, he says no one will believe me. That's a common tactic abusers use to maintain control. Alice's voice carries an edge of steel beneath its professional calm, but I've handled hundreds of cases like yours. The law is on your side, especially when it comes to protecting Lucas. She outlines the legal process, restraining orders, custody hearings, divorce proceedings. Each step sounds simultaneously impossible and inevitable, like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing you must jump. We can file for an emergency restraining order today, Alice continues. Given the documented abuse and Lucas's medical situation, we have strong grounds. Maria's mind spins. Everything Alice describes contradicts the reality Daniel has constructed around her. In his world, she is powerless, worthless, trapped. But here, in this sun-filled room with its potted plants and legal pads, another possibility unfolds. I'll give you some time to think it over, Alice says, gathering her papers. But Mrs. Gonzalez, Maria, you don't have to live in fear anymore. There is a way out. After Alice leaves, Maria sits alone in her small shelter room, replaying the conversation. 6 years of Daniel's voice echo in her head. You're nothing without me. No one will help you. You can't survive on your own. She presses her palms against her eyes until colors burst behind her eyelids. The shelter feels simultaneously like a fortress and a prison, safety from Daniel, but also a reminder of her failure to protect Lucas sooner. What kind of mother lets her child live in fear for so long? A knock interrupts her spiral. Clara enters with a steaming mug of tea, setting it on the nightstand without comment. The simple kindness makes Maria's eyes burn. Alice is very good at what she does, Clara says after a moment. She understands what you're going through. Maria wraps her hands around the warm mug, anchoring herself in its heat. I want to believe her, but Daniel, he always finds a way to win. That's because he's had all the power until now. Clara sits in the room's single chair, her presence steady and undemanding. But you've already taken the hardest step by leaving. Everything else is just details. Just details. As if untangling 6 years of manipulation and control could be reduced to paperwork and court dates. And yet, Maria thinks of Lucas, sleeping peacefully in the next room. His cough is finally easing, thanks to the medicine she dared to get against Daniel's wishes. She took that step. She chose Lucas's health over Daniel's control. Maybe she can choose freedom too. The week before the preliminary hearing passes in a blur of preparation. Alice meets with Maria daily, helping her organize her testimony into clear, impactful statements. Each session feels like surgery without anesthesia. Necessary but excruciating. Focus on specific incidents, Alice advises, reviewing Maria's notes. The night he threw the coffee mug. The time he disabled your car to keep you from visiting your mother. The day Lucas was sick. Maria's hand cramps around her pen as she writes. Some memories flow easily onto paper, while others resist exposure like infected wounds. She struggles to include certain details, the names he called her, the ways he touched her without consent, the threats whispered in darkness. I know this is difficult, Alice says, noticing Maria's hesitation, but the judge needs to understand the full scope of Daniel's behavior. Every detail matters. Maria nods, forcing herself to continue writing. Each word feels like a betrayal of the silence Daniel demanded, yet also like reclaiming pieces of herself she thought were lost forever. The morning of the hearing arrives too quickly. Maria stands before the courthouse mirror, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from the conservative blue dress Clara helped her choose. The woman staring back looks simultaneously familiar and foreign, someone caught between victim and survivor. Lucas hugs her tight before Clara takes him to the shelter's daycare. "Be brave, Mama," he whispers, and Maria almost breaks down right there. The courtroom looms vast and cold, all polished wood and stern faces. Maria's heels click too loudly on the marble floor as she follows Alice to their assigned table. She keeps her eyes forward, but she feels Daniel's presence like ice down her spine when he enters with his lawyer. She risks one glance. He looks exactly the same, crisp suit, perfectly knotted tie, expression of controlled displeasure. How can he appear so normal when she feels shattered into 1,000 pieces? "All rise," the bailiff calls, and Maria stands on trembling legs. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, reviews the preliminary documents. "Mrs. Gonzalez," she says finally, "please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant." Maria rises, her prepared testimony suddenly evaporating like morning dew. But as she begins to speak, something shifts. The words that seemed so difficult with Alice now pour out like a river breaking through a dam. She describes the morning routine, measuring coffee grounds with trembling hands, timing breakfast precisely to Daniel's schedule, teaching Lucas to move silently through their own home. She recounts the night Lucas's fever spiked, how Daniel dismissed her concerns until she dared to seek help without permission. Her voice shakes at first but grows stronger as she continues. This is not just her story anymore. It's a record of survival, a testament to every mother who has placed herself between her child and harm. "He said no one would believe me," Maria says, meeting the judge's steady gaze. "That I was crazy, dramatic, unfit to make decisions. But when I saw Lucas struggling to breathe that night, I knew I had to choose. I could be the obedient wife Daniel demanded, or I could be the mother Lucas deserves." The courtroom sits silent when she finishes. Even Daniel's lawyer has stopped writing notes. Maria remains standing, suddenly aware of her racing heart, the sweat dampening her palms, the way her whole body trembles with adrenaline. But beneath the physical reactions, something else unfolds, a revelation that spreads through her chest like sunlight after storm clouds. This moment is larger than her fear of Daniel, larger than her shame at failing to leave sooner. This is about Lucas, about breaking the cycle of violence before it can claim another generation. The judge asks several questions, her tone neutral but intent. Each answer feels like another brick in a wall between Maria's past and future. When the judge finally speaks, her words cut through the courtroom's tension like a blade. "Based on the testimony and evidence presented, I am granting the petitioner's request for a temporary restraining order." She fixes Daniel with a stern look. "Mr. Gonzalez, you are to have no contact with Mrs. Gonzalez or the minor child until the formal custody hearing. Do you understand?" Daniel's face darkens, but he manages a terse nod. His lawyer whispers something in his ear, but Maria barely notices. The judge's words echo in her mind. Granting the request, no contact, temporary restraining order. Alice squeezes her arm gently as they gather their papers. "You did wonderfully," she murmurs. "This is just the first step, but it's a significant one." Outside the courtroom, Clara and several other shelter residents wait with Lucas. He runs to Maria, wrapping his arms around her waist. The familiar weight of him grounds her, reminds her why every moment of testimony was worth the pain. "You're very brave," Clara says, touching Maria's shoulder. "Both of you." Back at the shelter, the reality of the morning slowly sinks in. The restraining order is temporary, a brief respite before the larger battle for custody. Daniel's resources and connections still loom like storm clouds on the horizon. But watching Lucas play with the other shelter children, his laughter echoing off institutional walls, Maria feels something she hasn't dared to nurture in years: hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but something stronger. Hope built on legal rights, on community support, on her own newly discovered strength. Lucas catches her eye and waves, his smile bright enough to eclipse any shadow Daniel cast. Maria waves back, her heart so full it aches. They have taken the first step toward freedom, toward a future where Lucas can laugh without fear and Maria can finally reclaim her voice. The road ahead remains uncertain, but Maria knows this much. She will never again measure her worth in level coffee scoops or perfect toast. She is more than Daniel's wife, more than Lucas's mother. She is a woman rediscovering her own power, one testimony at a time. And that, she realizes, watching Lucas build a tower with his new friends is worth fighting for. Maria's fingers tremble as she spreads the documents across Alice Rivera's desk. Medical records spill from manila folders like autumn leaves, each page a reminder of the night she defied Daniel to save Lucas. Her son's hospital discharge papers, prescriptions for antibiotics, the doctor's neat handwriting noting severe pneumonia and delayed medical care. "These are good," Alice says, her voice steady as she sorts through the evidence. Afternoon sun streams through her office window, catching dust motes that dance between them. The medical records establish a clear pattern of medical neglect. "Do you have any photos from that time?" Maria reaches into her purse, withdrawing an envelope she's carried like a talisman since leaving Daniel. The photographs inside feel both familiar and foreign. Clinical documentation of her own body, taken by a nurse at the women's shelter the morning after their escape. Bruises blooming purple across her shoulder, the slight swelling where her wrist hit the counter. Each image tells a story she's tried so hard to forget. "When did these injuries occur?" Alice asks, her pen hovering over a legal pad. "2 weeks before we left." Maria's voice catches. She forces herself to continue, remembering Clara's words about the importance of speaking her truth. "Daniel was angry about the coffee being too strong. He threw the mug, and when I tried to dodge it..." She gestures to the photograph of her shoulder. Alice nods, making careful notes. Her methodical approach helps Maria maintain her composure. This isn't about reliving the trauma. It's about building a case. Evidence. Facts. Things that can stand up in court against Daniel's lies. "What about text messages?" Alice looks up from her notepad. "Did Daniel ever make threats via text?" Maria pulls out her old phone. A basic model Clara helped her get after leaving the shelter with a new number. Daniel doesn't know, but she kept the SIM card from her previous phone, preserved like a black box recording of a crash. She powers it on, and immediately messages begin flowing in. Dozens of them, all from Daniel. "Where the hell are you? You better bring my son back right now. You're nothing without me. No one will help you. I'll make sure you never see Lucas again." Alice's expression remains professional as she scrolls through the messages, but Maria notices her jaw tighten. "These establish a clear pattern of threatening behavior," she says, taking screenshots. "We can use these to support the restraining order and custody petition." A knock at the door makes Maria jump. Alice's assistant pokes her head in. "Your next client is here. Give us 5 more minutes, please." Alice turns back to Maria. "You're doing really well. I know this isn't easy, but every piece of evidence makes our case stronger." Maria nods, gathering the scattered photos back into their envelope. Her hands have steadied somewhat, and she feels a fragile sense of accomplishment. Each document represents a small act of rebellion against Daniel's control, proof that she wasn't crazy, that the fear and pain were real. "One more thing," Alice says as Maria stands to leave. "The shelter mentioned you've been attending their support group. How's that going?" A small smile tugs at Maria's lips as she thinks of the women she's met there, especially Rosa. "It helps," she says simply. Sometimes it helps just to know I'm not alone." The shelter's common room glows warm in the evening light. Women cluster in small groups around battered coffee tables, their voices a gentle murmur of shared stories and quiet strength. Maria sits near the window, cradling a cup of tea that smells of chamomile and honey. Rosa's voice fills the room, steady and clear. "The day I won custody," Rosa says, her dark eyes bright with memory, "my ex-husband tried to tell the judge I was unstable, that I was making up stories about the abuse." She pauses, looking around the circle of women. "But I had proof. Pictures, medical records, witnesses who'd seen how he treated me and the children. The truth was stronger than his lies." Maria's fingers tighten around her mug as she listens to Rosa's words. Something shifts in her chest, not quite hope, but perhaps its quieter cousin. Recognition. She sees herself in Rosa's story, in the way she describes gathering evidence piece by piece, building a fortress of truth against her ex-husband's deceptions. "I won't lie to you," Rosa continues, her gaze finding Maria's across the circle. "The court battle was hard. There were days I wanted to give up, to believe what he said about me being worthless. But every time I looked at my children, She takes a deep breath. I knew I had to keep fighting. After the meeting, Rosa approaches Maria as other women filter out of the common room. The sunset paints the walls orange, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. How are you holding up? Rosa asks, settling into the chair beside her. I met with my lawyer today. Maria sets down her empty mug, going through all the evidence, the photos. She trails off, remembering the afternoon's emotional excavation. It feels like picking at scabs, doesn't it? Rosa's voice carries understanding without pity. But those wounds need air to heal. Maria nods, grateful for Rosa's straightforward wisdom. Daniel's lawyer is... She searches for the right words. He makes me feel small, like everything I say is a lie. Richard Bennett? Rosa's expression darkens. He represented my ex too. He's good at twisting things, making victims sound crazy. She leans forward, her eyes intense. But here's what you need to remember. Your story is true. Your evidence is real. No amount of legal tricks can change that. Later that night, after Lucas has fallen asleep in their small shelter room, Maria pulls out the folder of evidence Alice helped her compile. Moonlight spills through the window, illuminating the pages spread across her bed. Medical records, photographs, text messages, each piece a testament to her survival. She glances at Lucas, peaceful in slumber. His breathing is clear now, no trace remaining of the pneumonia that nearly cost them everything. A worn notebook sits on her nightstand, and Maria reaches for it, uncapping a pen. What I want to say in court, Lucas deserves a home without fear. I am a good mother. Daniel's control almost cost Lucas his health. We will not go back to walking on eggshells. I am stronger than Daniel thinks. The words flow onto the page, wobbly at first, then gaining strength. Maria writes until her hand aches, until the moon has tracked halfway across the sky. Each sentence feels like a brick in the foundation of their new life, solid, real, unmovable. The courtroom looms vast and cold, its wooden benches filled with strangers. Maria sits beside Alice, her back straight despite the trembling in her hands. Daniel's lawyer, Richard Bennett, prowls before the judge's bench like a well-fed cat, his expensive suit a armor of authority. Your Honor, Richard's voice fills the space with practiced confidence. I have evidence that Mrs. Gonzalez has consistently demonstrated poor judgment regarding her son's care. He produces a stack of papers with flourish. These bank statements show multiple withdrawals from the family's emergency fund, money that Mr. Gonzalez set aside for genuine crises. Instead, Mrs. Gonzalez spent it on unnecessary doctor visits and over-the-counter medications. Maria's chest tightens. Those withdrawals were for Lucas's prescriptions, for cough medicine when he couldn't sleep, for the antibiotics that saved his life. But Richard makes them sound frivolous, wasteful. Furthermore, Richard continues, gesturing to two men in the gallery, I call James Peterson and Michael Torres as character witnesses. Daniel's friends take the stand one after another. Their testimonies a carefully orchestrated dance. They describe Daniel as a devoted father, a successful businessman who provided everything for his family. They paint Maria as emotionally unstable, prone to overreaction, and poor financial decisions. Mrs. Gonzalez would often become hysterical over minor issues, James testifies, his voice dripping with false concern. Mr. Gonzalez would try to calm her down, to be reasonable, but she would insist on taking Lucas to doctors for every little sniffle. Maria's fingernails dig into her palms. She wants to scream that they never saw the real Daniel, never witnessed his rages, or felt the sting of his contempt. But her voice seems trapped in her throat, and the courtroom spins slightly at its edges. Richard's cross-examination feels endless. His questions slice through her defenses with surgical precision, making her doubt her own memories. Did she really need to take Lucas to the doctor that night? Was Daniel's anger justified by her defiance? The old fears creep back, whispering that maybe she is unstable as they claim. She glances at Lucas, sitting with Clara in the gallery. His small face is pinched with worry, and the sight of him cuts through her spiral of doubt. The night she took him to the clinic, his fever had burned against her palm like a brand. His breathing had rattled in his chest, each cough a reminder of what happened when she listened to Daniel instead of her maternal instincts. Alice stands, her movement drawing Maria back to the present. Your Honor, I'd like to address these allegations directly. Her voice carries quiet authority, a counterpoint to Richard's theatrical performance. First, regarding the medical expenses, she produces Lucas's hospital records, the same ones Maria had spread across her desk days ago. These documents show that Lucas was diagnosed with severe pneumonia, a condition that, left untreated, could have had devastating consequences. The withdrawals Mr. Bennett referenced were for life-saving antibiotics and necessary medical care. Alice moves methodically through the character witnesses' statements, highlighting inconsistencies in their testimony. When she presents the photographs of Maria's injuries, a hushed murmur ripples through the courtroom. These gentlemen claim they never witnessed any concerning behavior from Mr. Gonzalez, Alice says, her tone measured. Yet these documented injuries tell a different story, one that explains why Mrs. Gonzalez might have seemed, in their words, hysterical. She was living in constant fear for herself and her child. Maria watches the judge's face, searching for any sign of which way he might be leaning. His expression remains neutral, but she notices him studying the medical records with particular attention. Still, uncertainty gnaws at her stomach. Daniel's resources seem endless: his lawyer, his witnesses, his carefully constructed image of the wronged father. The battle isn't over, and Maria can feel the weight of what's still to come pressing against her chest. But she thinks of Rosa's words from the support group about truth being stronger than lies. She straightens her spine, ready to face whatever comes next. A small movement catches her eye. Lucas has shifted forward in his seat, his eyes fixed on the proceedings with an intensity that makes her heart ache. He shouldn't have to witness this, shouldn't have to shoulder the burden of adult conflicts. Yet here he is, watching his mother fight for their future. Maria draws strength from his presence, from the memory of his fever-hot skin against her neck as they fled into the rain. She survived that night. She'll survive this too. For Lucas, she'll find the courage to face whatever challenges lie ahead in their journey toward freedom. The minutes stretch like hours as testimony continues. Maria's thoughts drift to the support group meetings, to Rosa's words about truth being stronger than lies. She straightens her spine, drawing strength from those memories, from the evidence they've gathered, from every small step toward freedom. That's when she notices movement in the gallery, Lucas shifting in his seat, his face set with determination she's never seen before. The courtroom falls silent as Lucas's small figure rises from his seat beside Clara. No one had expected him to speak. He wasn't scheduled to testify. But there he stands, his Batman t-shirt wrinkled from sitting, his voice clear despite its softness. "I want to tell about when I was sick," he says, looking directly at the judge. Maria's heart hammers against her ribs. She wants to protect Lucas from this moment, shield him from the weight of adult battles. But his face holds a determination she recognizes, the same stubborn courage that drove her to defy Daniel that rainy night. The judge leans forward slightly. "Go ahead, young man." Lucas's hands twist in the hem of his shirt, but his voice remains steady. "I couldn't breathe good. It hurt here." He touches his chest. "Mama stayed up all night with me. She made special tea and put cool cloths on my head when I was hot." Maria watches Daniel's face across the courtroom. His mask of concerned fatherhood slips for just a moment, revealing a flash of the anger she knows too well. But Lucas continues, seemingly oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. "I asked Papa to help when it hurt really bad, but he said I was being dramatic." Lucas's words drop like stones into still water. "Mama took me to the doctor even though Papa said no. She was scared, but she did it anyway." The gallery holds its collective breath. Even Richard Bennett seems momentarily thrown off balance, his legal pad forgotten in his hands. The judge's expression softens almost imperceptibly as he watches Lucas. "The doctor gave me medicine that made me better," Lucas concludes. "Mama never left me alone when I was scared." Alice gently guides Lucas back to his seat, where Clara wraps a comforting arm around his shoulders. The courtroom remains hushed, as if Lucas's simple truth has cast a spell over the proceedings. Maria blinks back tears, overwhelmed by her son's bravery and the raw honesty of his words. Daniel shifts in his chair, his carefully constructed facade cracking. For the first time, he looks uncertain, perhaps realizing that no amount of legal maneuvering can counter the pure testimony of a child's experience. The judge clears his throat. "Thank you for sharing that with us, Lucas." He turns to examine the medical records again. this time with new understanding in his eyes. Your words have been very helpful. Maria catches Lucas's gaze across the courtroom. He gives her a small smile, not the bright, carefree grin of earlier childhood, but something more profound. A smile that speaks of shared battles and quiet strength. As they leave the courtroom that afternoon, Maria holds Lucas's hand tightly. The custody battle isn't over. There will be more hearings, more evidence to present, more battles to fight. But something has shifted, like the first ray of sun breaking through storm clouds. "You were very brave today," she murmurs to Lucas as they walk toward Clara's waiting car. Lucas squeezes her hand. "You're brave too, Mama." The words settle in Maria's chest like a warmth she thought she'd forgotten. She thinks of the evidence carefully gathered with Alice, of Rosa's encouraging words, of the shelter community that has become their temporary family. Each piece has brought them closer to freedom. But Lucas's simple truth might have done more than all their legal strategy. Back at the shelter, Maria adds a new line to her courthouse notes. "We are not alone anymore. We have our own strength, and we have each other." The words shine with fresh possibility. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, Maria allows herself to feel the first real stirrings of hope. Not the desperate hope that had sustained her through years of abuse, but something stronger, hope built on evidence, on community, on her son's unwavering love, and on her own emerging power. Outside their window, the city prepares for evening. Streetlights flicker on, cars hurry home, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimes. Maria watches Lucas settle at the small table with his coloring books, his movements more relaxed than they've been in weeks. The future stretches before them, uncertain but full of possibility. They are not at the end of their journey, but perhaps they have turned an important corner. Whatever comes next, Maria knows they will face it together, their truth stronger than any lie Daniel can construct. Steam rises from Maria's coffee cup, curling like question marks in the pre-dawn light of the shelter's kitchen. Her fingers trace the rim, remembering countless mornings spent measuring grounds with trembling hands, trying to brew the perfect cup to appease Daniel's temper. Now she sits between Clara and Rosa, drawing strength from their steady presence as she prepares for the final custody hearing. "You've come so far," Clara says, sliding a thermos across the worn kitchen table. Real coffee beans, not the cheap instant kind Daniel insisted was good enough. "Remember that moment you first walked through our doors, holding Lucas in the rain?" Maria nods, throat tight. That desperate night feels both distant and razor sharp in her memory. Lucas burning with fever, their few possessions left behind, Daniel's rage echoing in her ears. The shelter had seemed like her last resort. Now she knows it was her first step toward freedom. Rosa reaches across the table, her hand covering Maria's. "I was terrified my first day in court," she says, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "But you know what? The judge saw right through my ex-husband's act. They'll see through Daniel too." "What if?" Maria starts, but Clara gently cuts her off. "No what ifs," she says firmly. "You've prepared for this. The evidence is strong. Lucas's testimony alone is heartbreaking," Rosa finishes. No judge could hear him describe that night, how sick he was, how Daniel refused to help, and not understand what kind of father he really is. Maria draws a shaky breath, remembering the private interview where Lucas spoke to the court advocate. Her brave boy, describing in his small voice how Mama had nursed him through the fever while Papa yelled about wasted money. The transcript alone had brought tears to Alice's eyes. Outside, traffic builds as the city wakes. Maria checks her watch. Time to leave. She stands, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from her borrowed suit. Clara insisted on buying it for her, claiming the shelter had a clothing fund. Maria suspects Clara paid for it herself. "Remember," Clara says, walking her to the door, "you're not that woman anymore. The one who jumped at shadows and measured coffee grounds like her life depended on it. You're stronger now." The morning air carries a hint of autumn as Maria walks the 6 blocks to the courthouse. Fallen leaves crunch under her sensible shoes, another gift from Clara, their colors brilliant against the gray sidewalk. A memory surfaces. Lucas collecting the prettiest ones last week, presenting them to her like precious gems. "For luck, Mama," he'd said, his smile bright and unguarded in a way it never was around Daniel. Alice Rivera waits on the courthouse steps, her briefcase bulging with documents. Months of evidence gathering, witness statements, medical records, police reports, paper proof of years of abuse, carefully organized and indexed. Alice's dark eyes spark with determination as Maria approaches. "Are you ready?" she asks, but it's not really a question. They've rehearsed this moment too many times. Maria clutches her own binder close. Inside, photos of Lucas's fever-flushed face the night they fled, prescriptions Daniel refused to pay for, school reports noting Lucas's increasing withdrawal, a paper trail of pain transformed into ammunition. Daniel's lawyer might try to rattle you, Alice warns as they climb the steps. Stay focused. Remember, you're not on trial here. He is. Maria nods, her heartbeat steady despite her nerves. This fight isn't about her anymore. It's about Lucas, about giving him a future where he doesn't flinch at loud voices or try to make himself invisible, a future where he can laugh without checking first to see if it's safe. The courthouse lobby buzzes with morning activity. Maria scans the crowd, her body tensing automatically. There, Daniel stands with his lawyer, his suit expensive and perfect, his face set in the same controlled mask he wore at home before the storms broke. Their eyes meet across the marble floor. Daniel's lip curls slightly, a familiar expression that once sent Maria scrambling to fix whatever had displeased him. Now she holds his gaze, her spine straight, until he looks away first. "Nice trick," Alice murmurs as they enter the courtroom, making him blink first. Maria settles into her chair, arranging her documents with careful precision. The courtroom's wooden panels gleam with old authority, and the American flag hangs still and serious in the corner. This room will witness the end of her marriage, one way or another. The judge enters, and everyone rises. As Maria sits again, she sends up a silent prayer, not for victory exactly, but for justice, for Lucas, for all the mornings yet to come. The preliminary formalities wash over her like distant waves. Alice's opening statement rings with quiet confidence. "Your Honor, this case is about more than custody. It's about a mother's right to protect her child from harm, and a father's persistent pattern of abuse that endangered both his wife and son." Maria focuses on her breathing, just as Clara taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Each breath carries her closer to the moment she's been preparing for. Finally, Alice's voice, the plaintiff calls Maria Gonzalez to the stand. Maria rises, her legs steady beneath her. As she walks to the witness stand, she feels Daniel's eyes boring into her back. Once, that gaze would have made her stumble. Now it pushes her forward, reminding her exactly why she's here. The Bible feels cool beneath her palm as she swears to tell the truth. She settles into the hard wooden chair facing the room where her future will be decided. Alice approaches, her heels clicking against the floor. "Mrs. Gonzalez," she begins, "please tell the court about the night of October 12th when you left your husband." Maria takes a deep breath. The story pours out of her like water from a broken dam. She describes Lucas's worsening cough, the fever that wouldn't break, Daniel's dismissal of their needs. Her voice catches when she recounts how Lucas struggled to breathe. "I begged Daniel to let me take him to the doctor," she says, her eyes fixed on Alice to avoid seeing Daniel's face. "He said I was being dramatic, that I was trying to waste his money, but Lucas was so sick." "What did you do then?" "I took the emergency money I'd hidden in my sock drawer, a few dollars saved from grocery shopping when I could. I carried Lucas to the clinic in the middle of the night. The doctor said he had pneumonia, that he needed antibiotics right away." Maria's hands clench in her lap. "When Daniel found out, please tell the court what happened when Mr. Gonzalez discovered you had taken Lucas to the doctor." Maria forces herself to look at Daniel now. His face is carefully blank, but she recognizes the tension in his jaw, the slight twitch of his fingers. He was furious. He grabbed my arm, shouted at Lucas when he started crying. Then he threw us out. No coats, no phone, nothing. It was raining and Lucas was still so sick. Her testimony continues, weaving through years of control and fear. The coffee mugs Daniel shattered when they weren't perfect. The bruises she hid under long sleeves. The way Lucas learned to read Daniel's moods, becoming quieter and quieter until he barely spoke at all. When Maria finishes, the courtroom sits in heavy silence. She risks a glance at the judge, whose expression remains neutral, but whose pen has filled several pages with notes. Alice's questions end. And Daniel's lawyer stands for cross-examination. He's sleek and expensive, like everything else Daniel surrounds himself with. His questions come like paper cuts designed to make her doubt herself. Mrs. Gonzalez, isn't it true that my client provided a comfortable home for you and your son? The apartment was nice, Maria admits, and didn't Mr. Gonzalez work long hours to support his family? Yes, so he trusted you to make decisions about the household, didn't he? Including decisions about Lucas's health? Maria straightens in her chair. He controlled every decision. Every penny had to be accounted for. When Lucas needed medicine, please just answer the question, Mrs. Gonzalez. I am answering, Maria says, her voice stronger than she expects. Daniel didn't trust me to make decisions. He controlled everything to keep us dependent on him. That's not trust. That's abuse. The word hangs in the air like smoke. Daniel's lawyer blinks, thrown off script. From the corner of her eye, Maria sees Daniel's hands clench into fists. After what feels like hours, Maria returns to her seat. Alice squeezes her arm briefly, a silent well done. But the real test comes next. The plaintiff calls Daniel Gonzalez to the stand. Daniel moves with the same controlled precision Maria remembers from home, as if the very air should arrange itself to his liking. He takes the oath with practiced smoothness, his voice carrying just the right note of gravity. His testimony paints a very different picture. A hardworking husband providing for his family, a responsible father concerned about unnecessary medical expenses, a man bewildered by his wife's erratic behavior. He describes the night Maria took Lucas to the clinic as a betrayal of his trust. I simply asked her to be more careful with our resources, he says, his tone reasonable. Children get sick all the time, she overreacted. Alice rises for cross-examination, her movements deliberate. Mr. Gonzalez, you testified that you were simply being fiscally responsible. How do you reconcile that with the $3,000 you spent on golf clubs last summer? Daniel's jaw tightens. That's different. That was a business expense. Networking is important in my field. More important than your son's health? I never said, what about the night Lucas's fever reached 103 degrees? Did you consider that an unnecessary expense? She didn't tell me it was that high. Daniel snaps, his composure cracking. She's always exaggerating. I have the medical records here. Alice interrupts smoothly, lifting a document. The clinic documented Lucas's temperature at 103.2 degrees. Are you saying they exaggerated as well? Color rises in Daniel's face. She should have discussed it with me first. I'm his father. She had no right. No right to seek medical care for your dangerously ill child? She went behind my back. Daniel's voice rises sharply. After everything I've done for her, all the sacrifices I've made, she betrays me like this? She's lucky I didn't. He catches himself, but too late. The mask has slipped, revealing what lies beneath. The judge leans forward slightly, pen moving across paper. Lucky she didn't what, Mr. Gonzalez? Daniel's lawyer jumps up. Objection, Your Honor. Badgering the witness. Withdrawn, Alice says smoothly, but the damage is done. Everyone in the courtroom heard the threat in Daniel's voice, saw the flash of rage he usually saved for private moments. The judge calls a brief recess. Maria sits quietly, watching Daniel confer with his lawyer in harsh whispers. She remembers how those whispers used to terrify her, how she would scramble to fix whatever had angered him before the storm broke. He's unraveling, Alice murmurs. The judge saw it too. When court resumes, the clerk reads Lucas's testimony into the record. Maria closes her eyes, letting her son's words wash over her. Mama always takes care of me when I'm sick. She makes soup and reads stories and checks my temperature lots of times. That night, I was really scared because it hurt to breathe. But Mama held me and said everything would be okay. Papa just yelled about money and slammed doors. I don't like it when he yells. It makes Mama shake, and then I shake too. Maria opens her eyes to find the judge watching her closely. She meets that steady gaze, letting her love for Lucas shine through any fear that remains. The closing arguments blur together. Alice's measured recitation of evidence, Daniel's lawyer trying to salvage something from the wreckage of his client's testimony. Maria barely hears them, focused instead on the weight of the moment. Years of fear and control have led to this. A quiet courtroom, a stack of documents, a judge's decision. When the judge speaks, her voice cuts through Maria's thoughts like a bell. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony presented, this court finds compelling reason to grant full custody of Lucas Gonzalez to his mother, Maria Gonzalez. Furthermore, the temporary restraining order against Daniel Gonzalez is hereby made permanent. The words take a moment to penetrate. Full custody, permanent restraining order, freedom. Daniel explodes from his chair, his face twisted with familiar rage. This is bullshit. She's lying. She's always lying. Mr. Gonzalez, the judge warns, but Daniel is beyond warnings now. You can't do this to me. That's my son, my house, my... Bailiff, the judge says quietly, and uniformed officers step forward. Daniel storms out before they reach him, slamming the courtroom door hard enough to make the windows rattle. The sound used to make Maria flinch. Now she barely blinks. Tears spill down her cheeks as Alice hugs her. Clara appears. She must have been waiting outside, and wraps Maria in a fierce embrace. You did it, she whispers. You really did it. But the victory doesn't feel real until Maria steps into the hallway and sees Lucas running toward her. She kneels to catch him, breathing in his clean child scent, feeling his small arms tight around her neck. We did it, Mama, he whispers, and Maria's heart nearly bursts with love. They pass Daniel in the parking lot. He stands by his expensive car, watching them with cold eyes. Maria feels the weight of his gaze but keeps walking, her hand firmly clasped in Lucas's. She doesn't look back. The shelter feels different when they return, less like a temporary refuge and more like a launching pad. Maria spreads apartment listings across the kitchen table while Lucas colors nearby, his crayons making happy scratching sounds against paper. This one's in a good school district, Clara says, pointing to a modest 2-bedroom unit. The manager knows our program. She's helped other women get started. Maria studies the listing. The apartment is small but clean, with a park nearby where Lucas could play. The rent is steep, but the bakery where she's been working part-time has offered her more hours. With careful budgeting, the kind that empowers rather than controls, they could make it work. What do you think, mi amor? She asks Lucas. Should we look at it? Lucas examines the photos carefully. Can I have blue walls in my room? We'll have to ask the landlord about painting, Maria says, then realizes she's smiling. Such a normal conversation, planning a future without fear. The apartment becomes their home over the next few weeks. Maria hangs curtains in cheerful colors, finds secondhand furniture with good bones, creates a space that belongs solely to them. Lucas's room does get blue walls. The landlord not only allows it, but provides the paint. Each morning, Maria wakes before dawn to bake bread and pastries, filling the bakery with warmth and possibility. Her coworkers become friends, teaching her new recipes, laughing at her jokes, treating her like a person worthy of kindness. In the afternoons, she picks Lucas up from his new school, where his teacher reports he's talking more, making friends, coming out of his shell. The shadows haven't completely faded. Sometimes Maria still startles at loud noises or finds herself unconsciously measuring coffee grounds. Lucas occasionally wakes from nightmares, calling for her in the dark, but they're healing day by day, step by step. Months later, Maria stands in the shelter's kitchen, not as a resident now, but as a volunteer. A woman sits where Maria once sat, clutching a coffee cup with shaking hands, a bruise darkening her cheekbone. I don't know if I can do this, the woman whispers. Maria pulls out a chair, remembering Clara's kindness on that first desperate night. Let me tell you a story, she says gently, about a woman who thought she wasn't strong enough until she had to be. Outside, the sun breaks through morning clouds, painting the room in shades of gold. In a few hours, Maria will pick Lucas up from school. They'll make dinner together in their little kitchen, talk about his day, maybe read another chapter of his latest favorite book. Normal moments that feel like miracles. The woman across the table listens, hope flickering in her eyes like the first spark of dawn. Maria recognizes that look. She wore it herself once, when Clara and Rosa showed her a path to freedom. Rosa joins them, setting down fresh coffee. They work as a team now, she and Maria, helping other women navigate the same journey they've traveled. Each success feels like another victory over Daniel, another crack in the wall of silence that protects abusers. Evening finds Maria climbing the stairs to their apartment, grocery bags in hand. The wait feels good. Simple errands no longer require permission or exact accounting. She buys what they need, what they want sometimes, managing their budget with care, but without fear. Lucas's voice greets her before she even opens the door. He's singing, actually singing, something he learned at school today. The sound stops Maria in her tracks, joy catching in her throat. How long has it been since she heard him so carefree? Mama! He runs to help with the bags, proudly showing off a math test with a gold star. Can we make enchiladas, like Abuela used to make? Maria pulls him close, breathing in the scent of crayons and playground sunshine. Of course, mi amor. You can help me with the sauce. They work together in their small kitchen where no one measures coffee grounds or walks on eggshells. Lucas chatters about his day, a new friend, a funny thing his teacher said, the book he's reading. His voice fills their home with light. As Maria watches him carefully tear lettuce for their salad, she sends up a silent prayer of gratitude. Not just for their freedom, but for this, ordinary moments of joy, a future expanding with possibility, the steady rhythm of their hearts beating in time with hope. The storm has passed. They are here. They are safe. They are free. And that is everything. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our story. Your time and support mean the world to us. If this video resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Your engagement helps us grow and continue sharing meaningful stories. See you in the next video.